Hey, what's happening, everybody? This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris, your host at Dan Besbris on social, and you can find Old Man Squad on social media at Old Man Squad, and that one will follow you back about 24, 36 hours after you follow it. It's me. Pretend like it's some magical entity. I will go through recent followers and make sure if you're a human and not a bot, that account will follow you back. Please take a second to hit that like button on YouTube if you're watching anywhere else or listening anywhere else. Subscribe and leave a 5-star review. We're trying to power boost our way up the boards, and that's the way we can do it. Subscriptions and 5-star reviews, and so thank you to everybody that continues to help us punch the algorithm a little bit. Comments are also appreciated on the YouTube feed. That is another little algorithm boost. Today, we're talking the New York Knicks. Slightly revamped New York Knicks. They added health and a wing. They lost a center. And they come into this season with high hopes. And they should, because the Knicks are probably pretty good this year. Also, in kind of a fun little twist, Knicks had a bunch of guys last season that had fantasy value. Forget just the whole year type of stuff. There were individual pockets where something like 8, 9 different guys posted value. Obviously, the big one was Jalen Brunson. He had the magical season from the heavens. He ended up at number 29 on 29 points per game, 4 boards and 7 assists with a steal and a little under 3 3-pointers on excellent percentages. But of course, a lot of that was because Julius Randle played only 46 ball games. OG Anunoby, who they traded for, only played about half of the games that he was supposed to in New York. And so when you take the other scoring threats out, you end up giving basically everything to Jalen Brunson. So for the Knicks, there's kind of this melding of two scenarios that we have to push together. We have to take a look at what happened down the stretch last year, or frankly, even just the last half, the second half of the season, or the last 2 months, or whatever sort of late season Knicks numbers you want to look at. And we then also have to look at what happened in the first part of the season. Plus, we have to include a healthy Mitchell Robinson, a no longer there Isaiah Hartenstein, and the addition of Mikal Bridges. So it was a busy offseason for the Knicks. It was a good one by all accounts. They're going to miss Hartenstein and what he's able to do from a passing standpoint and from a movement standpoint. But they're going to hope that Mitchell Robinson can cover up a decent amount of that. The final 2 months last year, Jalen Brunson was number 22. He was taking 24 shots a ball game. It was crazy. Dante DiVincenzo was number 28 while taking 16 shots a night. Josh Hart played almost 41 minutes a game on average for 2 months at the end of the season. He was number 63. Hartenstein was number 68 on only 25 minutes a game. OG Anunoby only played 9 games in there, and because he shot 40% at the free throw line during that stretch, he sat outside the top 140. But also, like, his role offensively is another one that's shrinking. We also had a week or two here and there where Precious Achiuwa was okay, but his fantasy game is weird, so it's not a path that we typically want to take. There was also like a 3 or 4 game run for Deuce McBride when Jalen Brunson was out, and the list goes on and on and on. What the hell are the Knicks this season? To understand this season, you need to understand small parts of what happened last season. But looking at everything together is actually fairly misleading. Because someone like Dante DiVincenzo, who ended up, taking a dozen shots a game over the entire season, but as you heard, over the second half of the year, he was at 16 shots, meaning the first half of the year, he was at 8. Well, you do that math pretty quickly. Half the year, he was at 8 shots. Half the year, he was at 16, mostly because Anunoby and Randle went down. I say mostly because. I mean, almost exclusively because of that. Josh Hart, kind of a similar phenomenon. Not that his number of shots changed a ton. He went from 8 to 10. That's not where his value lies, is, a whole bunch of extra shots per game. But rather, with Hart, it was more rebounds, because with no Randle or Anunoby, he had to kind of size up more assists. The ball was in his hands more, even if he wasn't a guy generally taking the shots. Those guys, as awesome as they were down the stretch last year, are about to see their role shrink dramatically because the Knicks lost a center and added a wing and added back a power forward and added back another wing that was hurt. The power forward in the ring being Randle and Anunoby. Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson is probably the Knicks' starting five. Meaning you get back to, honestly, not that far off what that lineup looked like at the beginning of last year when DiVincenzo and Hart were kind of fighting for whatever minutes were available. And we can try to throw, the first 2 months up on the screen for folks that are watching. If I could do this without screwing it up. Let's see what we got here. So Josh Hart was number 128 over the season's first 2 months on 28.5 minutes per game. So again, the minutes didn't change. Well, they went up and he started to play like 42 minutes a game. So yes, the minutes were very different. DiVincenzo was playing 21 minutes a game during that span. Brunson was 36. Anunoby joined the team after this. Mitchell Robinson played 29 minutes a game. Hartenstein was at 19. DiVincenzo, as we mentioned, was 21. And then the other bodies that were floating around that they sent out in trades to Detroit and Toronto. Emmanuel Quickley was getting 20-some-odd minutes a game during that span as well. But the important thing to note was that this team, one I think could argue, was thinner during the first 2 months of last year. And Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo didn't really come close to posting fantasy value. There are more roadblocks to those guys now. So the hope, and believe me, I got hope, but logic, unfortunately, trumps hope in this case. And I think you pretty much just have to write off DiVincenzo and Hart at the beginning of the year. Now, it's fair to also point out that Anunoby is extraordinarily injury-prone over the last few seasons. So, and Tom Thibodeau is not about to give him 29 minutes to keep him healthy. So he probably goes down at some point. And Randle, who knows? There are years where he's a pillar of health and he plays 82 games and, 37, 38 minutes a ball game because that's the Tom Thibodeau way. But he could also get hurt and Brunson could get hurt. And so there's all these things that could happen. But on draft night, you typically want to draft guys that don't require someone get out of their way for them to post fantasy value. Especially not if it's going to cost you. With Anunoby, it's a 10th round pick. With Hart, it's more like an 11th or 12th. So, fine. But, what are the odds Josh Hart comes out there and plays 40 minutes a game? 0. I'll answer that for you. It's 0 on opening night. What are the odds that Josh Hart can get up to 30 minutes a game on opening night? I wouldn't say 0, but damn low, because they've still got a couple of these guys. Some of the names that folks can see on YouTube are not there anymore. Bojan Bogdanovic, he went back in the Bridges trade. But again, this wasn't a guy who was taking a ton of shots once he got to New York anyway. Mikal Bridges is a high-minute, high-durability guy. Jalen Brunson is a high-minute, high-durability guy. Oh, and Anunoby's going to be a high-minute guy. Durability, question mark. Randle, high-minute guy. Durability, we sort of don't know. And then Mitchell Robinson, who the hell knows there. But backup center minutes are probably going to go, a couple to Randle, many to someone like a Jericho Sims, and I should say many to Precious Juice, and then whatever's left over to Jericho Sims. So, the fact that Mitchell Robinson is probably not playing 30 minutes a game doesn't really have an impact on what Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo are going to do, at least not a marked one. DiVincenzo was awesome last year. Don't get me wrong. A guy that posted top 30 value for a couple of months, that's awesome. But he went from being the number 2 option during that stretch, behind only Brunson, to being the number 6. Okay, 5 if you want to put him in front of Mitchell Robinson. From 2 to 5th. Second option to 5th option. Josh Hart, again, doesn't need a lot of shots to post value, but he does need to be handling the basketball and rebounding. And rebounders returned. Mitchell Robinson's back. Randle's back. Randle's the other rebounder there. They didn't have him. Yeah, Hardenstein's gone, but Robinson soaks that up. So with Hart, you need rebounds and assists. Rebounds will probably come in some capacity, but if he's not playing 30 some odd minutes a game, it's going to be tough to get to a steal. It's going to be tough to get over a three-pointer. He's not going to elevate you with percentages. So I pass. I kindly pass on Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart. I just don't think that there's certainly no upside with this team healthy. Floor, okay, fine. There's some floor because, like, these guys are pretty good basketball players, and Tibbs will have his guys, and so he'll play them something. But 24, 25, 26, like, that's not enough. And don't get it twisted. Dante DiVincenzo, he was number 62 last year in 29 minutes a game, but that's because he was in a big usage role for a lot of those minutes. We just pointed it out a second ago before I clicked the wrong button and screwed up what everybody was looking at on the YouTubes. The first 2 months of the season, DiVincenzo was taking only 7 shots in 20 minutes. Down the stretch, as we talked about, if you go last 2 months, he was taking 16 shots in 37 minutes a ball game. So not only did his minutes nearly double, but his usage rate went up also. Like, to have the minutes go up and the usage go up at the same time, that's a double threat. And now it goes the other way. Minutes are going down and the usage is going down faster. But what about the starters? Because I think you could make a pretty good argument that all 5 Knicks starters have some sort of fantasy relevance in different formats, different punts, whatever. Let's start with Jalen Brunson, who in my mind is being consistently overdrafted this year, but the reasons are quite obvious and clear, and it's because of what he did when the whole team was dead last season. Jalen Brunson is being pre-ranked at number 21. His ADP is 21, so pre-rank and ADP agree exactly. He was number 20, basically, 19, if we want to get real specific, the second half of last season on 23.5 shots per game. And it gets crazier because over the final month, when it was Jalen Brunson versus the universe, this is when Anunoby played only 7 of the team's 16 ball games. Julius Randle was out. Brunson was playing 36-plus minutes a night and took 26 shots per game. And that's when he was on the turn. But you want to know who's not going to take 26 shots per game? The entire freaking NBA. Nobody. Luka Doncic led the league in field goal attempts last year at 23.6. You think someone out there is going to eclipse him in usage? I don't think so. I mean, Joel Embiid was basically the closest thing to it. It ain't going to be Brunson with the team healthy around him, because it's this same thing again. A tale of 2 seasons last year for the New York Knicks, plus personnel changes. Friends, Jalen Brunson was good before everyone on the Knicks got hurt. But he wasn't top 20 good. You guys know what Brunson was averaging the first 2 months this last year? 19 shots a game. That was with Randle taking 18 shots beside him. And that's all it took. Like, the Knicks didn't have a bunch of other usage guys at that point. They acquired Anunoby midseason. They now acquired Mikal Bridges, who's not like a super high usage guy. He was in Brooklyn, but he shouldn't be. But that's what you should be looking for from Jalen Brunson. 18, 19, 20 shots per game, not 26. It's hard, I think, to get a perfect read on Brunson just looking at the first 2 months last year, because he shot 46% from the field and he shot like 79% at the free throw line. Those numbers were unseasonably low. If you bring him back to the expected percentages, given his history and shot profile, field goal percent will probably be between 47 and 49. Call it 48, kind of split the difference. Free throw is going to be in the low to mid 80s. He finished the year, what was the second half of the season? He was at 86% foul shooting. That's probably a little higher than expected, but whatever. Like, even if we get wild with it, Jalen Brunson on 18, 19 shots a game, shooting 48% from the field and 85% at the free throw line. is probably more like a third rounder. And that's still quite good. Still quite good. But getting inside that top 20, that requires someone around him to not be there. I don't think, I'll say this about Brunson, I don't think he loses much usage to Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, but even small slivers of it for someone whose value is honestly very tied up in usage because he's not a rebounder and doesn't get a ton of defensive stats, but he's good percentage-wise pretty much in both. So there's almost no downside to Brunson doing more, meaning, and we've done this sort of like thumbs up, thumbs down thing. When someone gets more usage, what are the things that could change conceivably? Points, threes, assists, field goal, free throw percent, and turnovers. 6 of the 9 categories are directly tied to the basketball being in a player's hand. How many of them are good and how many of them are bad? For most players, obviously, turnovers is going to be the bad one. You're just like immediately dropped into 5 good, 1 bad. Of the other, or I should say 5 we don't know and 1 bad. Points, threes, and assists are always going to be good. Get more usage, you're going to get more of those things. It's not going to be linear necessarily, but balls in your hand more, you're going to score, you're going to get the threes, you're going to pass more. It's just how it works. So there's always 3 good ones, and there's always 1 bad one. What we don't know about are the percentages. Those are how does this thing level off? And for Brunson, they both fall in the good department. So he's a 5 up, 1 down guy for usage, meaning the other way, he loses some. It's 5 down, 1 up. That's a big drop off. An example of the opposite side would be someone like Julius Randle. Both percentages are bad. So he's points, threes, assists are good. Field goal, free throw, turnover, bad. More usage for Julius Randle isn't always a good thing. Generally, the good does outweigh the bad, but, not by a ton. Which is why the ceiling for Randle is exactly related to his percentages. It's tied up in that exclusively. It almost doesn't matter how much he does. If the percentages get better, he rockets up the board. If they get worse, he falls like a boulder because everything he does is tied to those. Now, obviously, he does more or less. That's how fast the percentages can swing the rankings. And we'll talk about Randle here in just a second. Just to finish up the discussion on Brunson, if Mikal Bridges, if OG Anunoby healthy, if these guys take any little something away from Brunson, if he goes, I still think he probably gets near 19, 20 shots a ball game, but if that does somehow fall a little bit further, then you're talking about top 45 instead. So 20 is just too high for a healthy Knicks team to take the plunge on Brunson. And I don't know how you argue that. With Randle, this is just a player I don't like to take a shot on. With Brunson, the math tells you this isn't a great decision. With Randle, it's not about math. It's about dice rolling. Because, he didn't play very much last year, but when he's on the court, you're looking to see what the percentages look like. Why does this look crazy to me right now? What did I do? Did I switch something up? Sorting by field goal attempt. So Julius Randle last year was number 129 in 9 category leagues. 24 points, that's big. 9 boards, 5 assists. Gotta like those a lot. Terrible defensive stats. Threes are fine for power forward. Field goal percent was a small negative. Free throw percent was also more like a medium. They're both sort of medium negatives. And the turnovers was an unmitigated mess. So obviously with Randle, 8 category is going to be better than 9. But do you get a 47-78 split out of Randle? Because that's not bad. The year before, it was a 46-76 split. That was rougher. Although turnovers, mind you, was quite a bit lower the previous year. I think it was a 2.8 instead of 3.5. But ACAT gives you another sort of avenue on the Julius Randle thing as well. I play 9-cat. I just do. Randle in 8-cat was number 53. Not this past season, the prior one. This season, and you guys can see watching me turn turnovers off, he was number 67. So he was a little bit lower. On 24, 9, and 5, the previous season, he was at 25, 10, and 4. So it's pretty close. More three-pointers. The prior year, he was at 2.8. This past season, he was at 1.7. The shot profile improved. That's why his field goal percent went up a little bit. but, 3-pointers fell by quite a lot. So 8 cat, Randle's going about where he ought to, which is, where the hell's Julius Randle? He's number 65. Very reasonable for 8 cat. And honestly, probably a steal in points leagues at 65. He should be going earlier than that in points formats. In 9 cat, if you're not punting turnovers, you're doing it wrong here with him. Julius Randle is a straight punt turnover dude, or a guy you could take a shot on if, say, you went hyper efficient early in your draft and you wanted to try to shore up some of the counting stats. Oh, I don't need steals. I don't need blocks. I don't need efficiency. I can worry about, I've got broken down Kawhi Leonard and other guys that are great in those categories and don't turn the ball over that much despite being early round draft picks. I'll just sort of flip it on its head. I'll get my high turnover guy in the 6th round, and I'll end up with low turnover guys early. I have Anthony Davis in the 1st round or something like that. So there are pathways where Julius Randle makes sense. I'm probably not going to end up with him in many spots because I typically do try to at least split turnovers. I like to be mid-pack in turnovers. I think that helps a lot during the regular season in a head-to-head league, a lot. That's a category where if you sort of stumble nose first into 10 extra wins in 20 weeks or whatever it is, that could really be the difference between 4th place and 1st place, is just being mid-pack in turnovers. So Randle perfectly fine in 8 cat where he's going at 60. What did I just say? 65. 9 cat, probably not. The other 3 starters for the Knicks. Let's do Mitchell Robinson next. We just talked about him, I think, on yesterday's show as someone that you could certainly give a look at after pick 100. I think he's at, where the hell are you at, Mitchell Robinson? 116 is the current pre-rank for Mitchell Robinson. He was number 202 last year. Yucky. No, sorry, he wasn't quite that far down the board. He was 187, almost that yucky. But if you were punting free throws, he was number 89. And you're like, how the hell, Dan? He only took 2 free throws a game. Yeah, but he shot 41%. That was peak Andre Drummond bad. Drummond did it 5 times a game. Drummond was basically doing what Giannis does now, where you have almost no chance. Almost no chance. You'll win it 5 to 10% of the time because, variance and stuff like that. And in Roto, you'll be at the bottom of the pack. And with Mitchell Robinson, you need 2 very good free throw shooters to counterbalance what he does to your team. So that's why I'm probably not going to take a shot on Mitch Rob this year, even though there is a certain kind of intriguing upside built into Mitch Rob. Remember, he was number 52 the previous season, even without a free throw punt. And it was the difference between shooting 41 and 48.5% at the line, while also playing full starters complement of minutes. This last year, he was at 25, mostly because he went down earlier in the year and then never kind of came back from that. I'm thinking back to, I think I had one team that had Mitchell Robinson this season, and I kept sitting on him like it was going to make a difference, but it didn't make a difference. He was brutal. The difference year over year for Mitchell Robinson, and you can look at the game log for him, what he did at the beginning of the year versus towards the end. His numbers were obviously much better at the beginning when there were games that he was playing 30 some odd minutes. Second freaking game of the year, he played 38 minutes in a win at Atlanta, and he ended up with 7 points, 13 rebounds, an assist, 4 steals, and 4 blocks. Freaking Goliath game out of Mitchell Robinson. And then he went down on December the 8th and didn't play again until March. And when he came back, he basically played 12 minutes a game. So he's another instance of the kind of tale of 2 seasons for the Knicks this past year. Mitchell Robinson, not bad at the beginning of the year, and then came back and was beat up and was behind Hartenstein, and he was an afterthought down the stretch. He was number 89 in 9 cat. What do you call it? I guess it was a month and a half, played about 20 ball games, 6 points, 10 boards, 1.5 steals, 1.3 blocks, 59% from the field, 37% at the free throw line. Woof. Only 1.8 attempts during that stretch, though. But the 29 minutes is the thing I want to focus on. What he showed here is that in starters minutes, even with the god-awful free throw number, he was actually still good enough to overcome it. If you are punting free throws, then he was dynamite. I screwed something up. I don't know what I screwed up on this board that I'm trying to show you guys, and there it is. I figured it out. So if you're punting free throws, the first month this last year, he was number 42. That's an impressive number to get outside the top 110. Do we take a shot on him? It's a dice roll, man. I oftentimes end up building teams that are really, really, really good at foul shooting. And then you start to think, okay, well, head-to-head, maybe I continue to lean into this thing. Roto, you build up enough of a buffer. Like, you can only win it by so much in Roto. If you have a free throw percent of 84 and the second-place team is at, like, 81.6, you probably should have had Mitchell Robinson on your team to give you a boost in that other stuff. So probably feel your team out a little bit. If you're in dire straits in foul shooting, I don't know that I'd go farther down that path. If you have a pretty good cushion, then Mitchell Robinson is a pretty good pick at 100 and whatever. Because as we've seen, starters minutes, he puts up top 100 or better numbers, even with the bad foul shooting. Last two names on the Knicks assessment board, OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. Now, OG, you certainly cannot look at the entire season because he wasn't with the Knicks the whole season. What you can look at is basically the final 2 months. And he's only played 9 of those games. They picked him up a little bit early, so we can look at like his 15 games basically with New York. He had an unsustainably high number of defensive stats over that span, and I know that this is a thing that he's generally good at, but it's not going to be that good. Much as I'd love to say that it will be, it's not. He was at 2.7 combined defensive stats with the Knicks. He had never in an entire season been higher than 2.6, which he did in 2022, 2023 with Toronto. That was a year where he was getting Defensive Player of the Year votes. That was the like big OG as a top 40 kind of guy. Most of the time with Toronto, he was around 2 to 2.2. So I would dial specifically blocks down from 1 block a game to more like 0.6, I think is an expected number for him. He took 11 shots a game with New York, but again, a lot of that was without Julius Randle, so you can assume that's not going any higher. Free throws have never been great for OG. He'll probably be mid to high 70s. Rebounds will be around 4 to 4.5. Assists are not going to be much. So you're basically banking on steals, blocks, around 1.5 to 2 3-pointers, and hopefully percentages that are close to neutral. 13, 14 points a game, probably. Because he's just not going to have the role he had in Toronto. He's not the feature guy on this team. He's probably the 4th offensive option behind Brunson, Randle, and Bridges, I would think. And not that OG needs a ton of usage to have fantasy value, but he needs some. Luckily, he's going pretty late. So that's the bonus. He's being drafted at 109. Or that's his pre-rank. I think his ADP is actually a tiny bit earlier than that. Yeah, his ADP is 102, although it's been trending down after starting kind of early and then moving back now closer to his pre-rank. Would I take OG Anunoby at 109? Yeah, probably. It might as well, you know? Like, what's the harm there? He's a starter. He's going to play starters minutes. We know he has pretty good fantasy game for the steals, the blocks, the threes, the kind of quiet across the board type of production. By all accounts, he probably ends up somewhere near 80 to 90 range per game. I don't think he's going to game break if you take him at 109. But again, what if Randle gets hurt? What if Bridges gets hurt? He hasn't yet, but it could happen. That's how OG takes one more step forward. So he's probably a very small value at his current draft position, but there is some upside built in should he somehow stay healthy and the guys around him go down. And the final name to look at is Mikal Bridges, who, like, we could look at what he did in Brooklyn last year, and, you know, we might as well. He was number 90 on 19.5 points, 2.7 threes, 4.5 boards, 3.6 assists, a steal, 0.4 blocks on an atrocious 43.8 from the field. and also not a very good 81.4 at the free throw line. But also, like, this is not the Bridges you're going to get in his new confines. He's not going to be the guy that needed to take 15 to 20 shots a game for Brooklyn offensively. I think the Knicks are bringing him in to basically be what he was in Phoenix the year before last. As I, once again, what is with these moths that keep coming out of the corner of my bedroom? Fairly certain I caught that one. I don't know. Could you guys tell if you slow it down? Did I catch it? Mikal Bridges was number 55 in his last full year in Phoenix. That was 21-22. 14 points, 4 boards, 2 assists. I mean, he basically OG Anunoby's line. Lower steals and blocks by a little bit, but a much better set of percentages. So if you want better percentages and slightly lower defensive stats, you go Bridges. If you want the worst percentages and probably higher defensive stats, you go OG. The difference, of course, is that Bridges hasn't missed a game in half a decade, and OG hasn't cleared 70% games in about half a decade. So obviously, that's the big reason that Bridges is going way earlier. From a straight rank standpoint, I don't think those guys are all that far apart. So I like Bridges. I've got no problem with him. I think his pre-rank is 60 right now. Yeah, ADP of 53.5. But he's probably Phoenix Bridges, which is between 45 and 70 per game because of the percentages coming back up. But we don't actually know. Like, maybe the field goal percent never gets back to where it was before. The Knicks offense is not going to be as efficient as that Phoenix one was that he was in, with Chris Paul and Booker and Ayton and a lot of ball movement and one of the best passers to ever exist. So, the Knicks have some passing, but what is Bridges' role going to be on that team? So I'm actually a little bit lower on Mikal Bridges than I think folks would have assumed. I think a lot of people know the way I typically draft fantasy teams and the way we talk through it on this show, and thought, all right, this feels like the guy going back into a Dan role. But it also has that air of, we don't really know. Is he going to take 11, 12 shots a game with the Knicks? Is he going to still try to get up to 14 or 15? I don't really want to be the guy holding to find out. Because what if he gets up to 14 shots and he gets the efficiency back up? I mean, that's the way that he goes flying past his ADP. But if we're just playing the odds here, odds are his shot number is going to go way down in New York. From 16 probably down to 11 or 12. Like OG. Scoring's going to go down. Threes are going to go down. You hope steals come back up a little bit. You hope field goal percent comes way up. I mean, we had a 10% drop off from that last Phoenix year to this last season in Brooklyn. You hope these things happen. And if they all do, then he gets to top 50. And I just don't think there's enough breathing room between where he's getting drafted and where we want him to end up. And that, ladies and germs, is your New York Knicks season preview here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I know it wraps up with us looking at a Brooklyn board, so I'll flip it back over to the Knicks. One thing to keep an eye on, of course, is the people that draft Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo will probably end up dropping those guys, and they may end up having stretches where they run fantasy value. Hart is probably the next man up. As someone gets down, he's going to be a guy that soaks up minutes, and minutes is value for him because you need the rebounds, you need the assists, you need the steals, you need the threes. All that stuff comes up, and he's just on the court. DiVincenzo, to me, moved way farther away because he needed the shots more than he needed the minutes. The usage was the bigger thing for Dante. The minutes, the rebounds were the bigger thing for Josh Hart. So keep an eye on those guys, but I would rather treat him as a burger board type, which I realize that's a weird nomenclature for anyone that's finding me for the first time. The burger board of lore, of legend, is a series of tweets that I put out during the season where I rank injury fill-ins on how many burgers they're going to eat in a given ball game. So if they're going to eat one burger, that's an okay injury fill-in. 2 burgers is a great one, and 3 is top 25 kind of individual one game, who's filling in for who. It was there weren't many 3 burgers over the course of the year. Plenty of 2 burger guys jumped out. Deuce McBride when Jalen Brunson went down, because then he played 42 minutes and took 9 3-pointers for a week. That's a 2 burger. Josh Hart probably goes from being outside to being a one burger when, say, I don't know, Randle or Bridges might not miss a game, but if someone misses a game in that front court, Josh Hart probably goes from mid-20s to high 20s, maybe low 30s in minutes, and that's how he gets you that like 10 and 10 type of line. So that's the one burger. But those are guys you don't have to draft and stash. Those are guys you can pick up on the waiver wire when everybody else decides they don't want to deal with it anymore. Thanks for watching, everybody. Tomorrow, we'll break down another team. We now only have two left, the Raptors and the Nets. We just flashed them up on the screen for a minute at the end of this episode. There's a reason I'm holding Brooklyn until last. I was kind of hoping that they would make another trade before we had to do the show, because right now they're a weird fantasy team. Raptors are not that weird. So probably Raptors tomorrow, if you guys are placing bets on it. I'm Dan Vespris. That's also my Twitter handle. This is Old Man Squad, at Old Man Squad. Fantasy basketball. Drop a follow on all that stuff. Please like and subscribe on your way out. Make sure to sit through all the commercials because that's good for us these days. Thank you to everybody that continues to like and subscribe and drop those 5-star reviews. A number of you did me a favor on that front over on the social side, and I very much appreciate that. Also, again, throw a comment after the fact. I respond to like 99% of comments on these YouTube videos right now, and I don't know if they're going to pick up like crazy a month from today, but last day of August, I still got time for that. Okay, that's it. See you guys.